My brother and wife laughed at me when I quit my job to start a podcast. Nobody wants to hear you talk, she chuckled. 6 months later, I was sitting across from Elon Musk. You made it, huh? He said. I just smiled. They didn't think I would. Their screens lit up as I went live with a million viewers watching. I don't even know how to start this. It's not like I woke up one morning and thought, you know what would be fun? Burning my whole life down and starting from scratch. No, it wasn't like that. But sometimes, you just reach a point where you look at the life you've built, your job, your relationships, the daily routine, and you realize none of it feels like you anymore. I'm Carter, 43, divorced, no kids, used to live in Charleston, South Carolina. Worked sales most of my adult life. Regional sales manager for a home fixtures company. If you've ever bought a fancy faucet from a catalog, there's a good chance it came through us. It was a solid job. Paid well. Bonuses were decent. I had my own little office, traveled every now and then, and I knew the ins and outs of the business like the back of my hand. My coworkers respected me. I was dependable, consistent. But dependable and consistent can start to feel like a cage after a while. It started subtle. I'd stare at spreadsheets and think, what the hell am I even doing? My days felt like reruns. Same calls, same meetings, same small talk. I was waking up tired, going to sleep numb. Even my weekends felt gray, like I was pressing pause on life and hitting play again Monday morning. One Thursday in October, after another mindless Zoom call where half the people weren't even listening, I clicked out, leaned back in my chair, and just stared at the wall. For almost 15 minutes. I remember that because I checked the clock. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid there thinking, is this it? This can't be it. Not for the next 20 years. So the next day, I quit. No drama. No big blow up. Just a calm conversation with my boss, Michael. He blinked like I just told him I was joining a cult. You're quitting? You've been with us 12 years. I know. You got something lined up? Not yet. He leaned back and scratched his beard. You all right, Carter? I think I will be. He didn't understand. Hell, I barely did. I packed up my office, drove home in silence, and sat on my porch with a beer, just breathing. I didn't even tell anyone for a couple days. I needed to sit with it first. Let the world feel different. When I finally told my family, I thought they'd at least ask why. Maybe be concerned, maybe supportive. I wasn't expecting cheers or balloons, but damn, I wasn't ready for how fast they dismissed me. It happened at my brother's house. Brent. He's 3 years younger than me, lives with his wife Isla and their 2 kids out in Mount Pleasant. Big house. Picture perfect life. White fence, golden retriever, weekly soccer games. The whole thing. They had me over for dinner the Sunday after I quit. I figured I'd tell them in person. Isla made grilled chicken and quinoa salad, something healthy and flavorless, and we were sitting around the kitchen island sipping white wine out of fancy stemless glasses. Brent leaned on the counter and asked, so how's work? I cleared my throat. Actually, I left. He blinked. You left as in quit? Yeah. Isla looked up from her phone. Wait, what? What? I needed a change. It wasn't doing it for me anymore. You had a great job, Brent said. I thought you were up for another bonus. I was. But it didn't matter. I wasn't happy. There was this long pause. Then I said, I've been thinking about starting a podcast. Isla actually laughed. Not like a giggle. A full, sharp laugh that bounced off the granite countertops. A podcast, she said wide-eyed. Oh my God, Carter, nobody wants to hear you talk. I laughed too, but not because it was funny. I laughed because I couldn't believe she actually said that. Brent chuckled under his breath. You serious? Like a real podcast? Yeah. Something about second chances. Career pivots. People reinventing themselves. Is that even a real thing? Isla asked, picking at her salad. People make money doing that. Some do, I said. If it's good. Well, she said, sipping her wine. Good luck with that. They moved on like it was nothing. Started talking about their next vacation. Pretzel, the dog, laid his head on my foot like he could feel how small I felt just then. I left early. On the drive home, I played back her words over and over. Nobody wants to hear you talk. It hurt. More than I expected. Because I thought, of all people, they'd at least say, well, good for you. But nah, just laughter. But that night, after I got home, I sat at my desk and ordered 2 microphones. The learning curve was steep. I had no experience. I didn't know how to edit audio. I didn't know what software to use. And I sure as hell didn't have a clue about branding or building an audience. But I didn't care. I was obsessed. I converted my guest room into a little recording space. Put up foam panels, bought a decent boom arm, learned everything I could from YouTube and Reddit threads. I called the podcast Second Wind. My first episode was just me talking about why I left my job. It was rough. My voice cracked. I rambled. I think I said, 70 times. I published it anyway. For the first month, I had maybe 12 listeners. Probably half of those were me checking to make sure it uploaded correctly. But then I interviewed a woman named Maribel. She used to be a head chef in D.C., worked under some big names, Michelin-level stuff. She quit it all and started a food truck in Asheville. Her story was raw, honest. You could hear the weight in her voice when she talked about burnout, imposter syndrome, and what it felt like to walk away from the prestige. That episode hit. She posted it on her Instagram. Her followers shared it. Suddenly, I was getting emails. Strangers saying, "Thank you. This is exactly what I needed to hear." A guy from Ohio said he listened to it in his car and cried. A woman in Boston told me she was thinking about leaving her corporate job, and that episode pushed her over the edge. I started getting small sponsors. A journaling company. A tiny startup for career coaching. Just enough to cover costs. Brent never mentioned it. Isla didn't even follow the show. But I kept going. Then came the email. It landed on a Tuesday morning, subject line. Guest opportunity, Elon Musk. I thought it was spam. A prank. But it wasn't. One of Elon's assistants said he had heard my podcast, specifically, the one with Maxine Riedel, a former Tesla engineer I'd interviewed 3 weeks prior. Elon liked how I asked questions without interrupting. Said he appreciated how I let her speak. Didn't try to sound like a know-it-all. 3 weeks later, I was sitting across from him in Austin. When he walked in, I stood up and held out my hand. He grinned and said, "You made it, huh?" I smiled. They didn't think I would. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Off-the-record stuff. Real stuff. Not just space and tech, but failure, loneliness, burnout, legacy. When we went live, the view count hit 1 million within the hour. I checked my phone. Isla had finally followed the podcast. I didn't follow her back. After that Elon episode, everything changed. I don't mean that in some abstract, my life is different now way. I mean within hours of that episode dropping, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Emails, texts, DMs. I didn't even know I had that many inboxes. I remember just staring at the screen, frozen, watching my follower count double, then triple. People were tagging clips, quoting parts of the interview, stitching my face onto reaction memes. I'd gone viral, and not in the cringy dancing TikTok way. And you know what hit me the hardest? I didn't feel like I'd made it. I felt validated. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the delusional idiot Isla thought I was. Like maybe the voice they laughed at, the one they said no one wanted to hear, mattered to someone. Hell, it mattered to 1 million someones. But that validation, it didn't come with peace. If anything, it stirred something up in me. Because right around the time things started taking off, so did the whispers, the side comments, the family drama. It started subtly, as these things do. Brent texted me one morning. "Heard you interviewed Musk?" No punctuation. Just that. I waited a full day before replying. "Yeah, good talk." He left it on read. A week later, I got a call from Isla. First one in months. I almost didn't answer, but I was curious. "Hey Carter," she started, her voice bright and fake like someone calling from a customer service center. "Hope you're doing well." "Sure. What's up?" She laughed lightly. "Okay, diving right in. I was wondering if you'd be open to maybe mentoring my brother? He's trying to start a podcast, and I thought, with your experience now, you might have some wisdom to share." I stared at my ceiling for a beat before answering. "You mean the same brother who once told me to get a real job when I said I was freelancing?" Long pause. She cleared her throat. "He's just trying to explore some options." It'd mean a lot to him. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't even sound annoyed. "Tell him to Google it," I said. That's what I did. And I hung up. Petty? Maybe. But I meant every word. See, people like Isla, they don't get it. They don't want to believe that someone like me could do something they didn't approve of and actually succeed at it. Because it makes them question everything they never did. And Brent? He was caught in the middle. Too proud to admit I proved him wrong. Too insecure to say, "I'm proud of you," without choking on the words. I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. But I wasn't done either. Because here's the part one haven't told you yet. Right around the time the podcast hit its stride, I started getting approached by production companies. Big ones. They wanted to turn Second Wind into a video series. One even mentioned Netflix. And that's when I decided I'd go home. Not permanently. Just for a visit. To Charleston. To see my family. To look them in the eye. I showed up on a Saturday afternoon, unannounced. Pulled into Brent's driveway in a rented black Audi. Not for show, my actual car was being shipped to LA. But it looked like a power move, and I didn't mind. Pretzel came bounding out before the front door even opened. I knelt down, ruffled his ears. "You still like me, huh, buddy?" Brent opened the door, blinking against the sun. "Carter, hey," I said casually, standing up. "Just in town. Thought I'd drop by." He hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Come in." Their house looked exactly the same. Neat, sterile, like no one actually lived there. Isla was in the kitchen in yoga pants, hair in a high bun, cutting strawberries. She turned, and her face shifted into that polite social mask she always wore. "Carter, wow, look at you. Yeah, it's been a while. You look different," she said, eyeing my button-down and leather shoes like I'd just walked off a magazine shoot. "I guess I feel different," I said. We made small talk. I asked about the kids. They asked about LA. Brent tried not to act curious, but I caught the little glances, like he was sizing me up, trying to figure out when exactly I became someone people knew. Then Isla, in her usual way, dropped the grenade. So are you rich now? I raised an eyebrow. Does it matter? She laughed, nervously this time. No, I just mean, it's crazy. 6 months ago you were, like, doing this in your guest room. And now people want to hear me talk, I said quietly, holding her gaze. She looked away first. Brent cleared his throat. You still doing interviews? Yeah, got one lined up next week. Oprah's people reached out. He blinked. You're serious? Dead serious. I let that hang in the air. Because here's the truth they couldn't say out loud. They were jealous. Not of the fame or money, though that didn't hurt, but of the freedom. The audacity to leap when everything said stay put. They were stuck in lives that looked perfect on paper, but felt like beige walls closing in. And I'd escaped. Not just survived. Built something. As I stood to leave, Isla followed me out to the porch. Carter, she said, her voice quieter now. I just want to say, I know I wasn't very supportive before. It's fine, I interrupted. You were honest. She looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't. I got in the car and drove off, Pretzel watching from the window like he wanted to come with me. I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I just drove with the windows down, the air warm and humid and sticky with the weight of old memories. The next day, I flew back to LA. And that night, sitting in my apartment with the lights low and my laptop glowing, I got a call I didn't expect. My mom. She's never been one to meddle. Quiet, southern sweet. Always supportive, but rarely vocal about it. Carter, honey, she said. I listened to that Elon interview. Yeah. I smiled. I'm proud of you. I looked out the window, blinked fast. Thanks, Mama. She paused. Some folks only see you once you've arrived. But I saw you climbing. I swallowed hard. You always did. I didn't sleep much that night after Mom called. I kept thinking about what she said. Some folks only see you once you've arrived. She was right. And it didn't make me angry. Really, it just made me tired. Like carrying a weight that didn't belong to me. A lifetime of being the steady one. The one who didn't rock the boat. Who stayed in line. Who made the safe choices. Then the one who, when he finally stepped off the path, got laughed at like he was a joke. But I wasn't mad at Isla anymore. Not even Brent. I was just done trying to prove anything to people who only understood the version of me they were comfortable with. The next few weeks were a blur. I was recording almost every day, Zoom interviews, in-person sessions, consultations with producers. My email was chaos, and I finally hired a guy named Nico to help manage everything. 25, smart as hell, said he used to listen to my early episodes in his college dorm when he was going through a quarter-life crisis. Now he ran my calendar like a drill sergeant. Carter, he said one morning while we were on a call, we've got something here. The media interest's not slowing down. You got to start thinking long-term. Branding, merch, maybe even a tour. I laughed. A tour? Like me talking on a stage? Why not, he said. You're not just some dude with a mic anymore. You're a voice people trust. That word again. Voice. I never used to think mine mattered. I was the guy in the meeting who spoke last. The one who always second-guessed what he wanted to say. I'd practiced entire conversations in the mirror just to avoid saying the wrong thing to the wrong person. And now, I was on track to hit 5 million monthly downloads. But with all that momentum came new pressure. More eyes. More opinions. More expectations. One night, I was editing an episode with a woman who had left a 20-year marriage to backpack solo through South America. Halfway through the edit, I realized I hadn't blinked in 5 minutes. My jaw was tight. My chest felt heavy. I hit pause and leaned back. There it was again, that feeling. Like something was unfinished. Unsaid. I knew what it was. Brent. We hadn't really talked since I left Charleston. Just polite texts. Holiday wishes. The occasional forwarded meme. But that silence, it wasn't neutral. It was a wall. And I knew, in my gut, that something deeper was sitting under it. So I called him. Took me 10 minutes to work up to it. I kept opening and closing my phone, pacing around the apartment like a teenager about to ask someone to prom. Finally, I just pressed call. He picked up on the third ring. Hey, he said, cautious. Hey, you got a minute? Yeah, what's up? I sat down at my kitchen counter. Look, I'm not trying to start anything, okay? I need to say something. He was quiet, but he didn't hang up. That was something. I'm not angry, I said. I think I've been carrying around this thing, and it's not even really about you. It's about me. About how I let other people decide what I was worth for most of my life. Brent exhaled into the phone. I get it, he said after a pause. I do. Do you? Yeah. I mean, not the podcast thing, but the feeling of being stuck in a version of yourself you don't even recognize anymore. That caught me off guard. He went on. Isla and I, man, things haven't been as picture perfect as they look. We've been seeing someone. A marriage counselor. I sat up straighter. Seriously? Yeah. For a while now. Since before you left the company, actually. That hit me. Suddenly, I wasn't looking at them like the perfect couple in the perfect house. I was looking at a guy who maybe wasn't so different from me. Scared, uncertain, going through the motions because it was safer than stopping. I'm sorry, man, I said quietly. Brent chuckled, dry. Don't be. That's life, right? Another pause. Then I asked, so why'd you laugh at me that day? He hesitated. I think I was scared, he admitted, of you failing. Because if you failed, then I could tell myself I made the right choices. But if you didn't, then what? I asked. Then maybe I wasted the last 10 years, he said. Neither of us said anything for a moment. It was heavy, real, and even though it hurt, it was what I needed to hear. Thanks for saying that, I said. No problem. We hung up not long after. No grand resolution. No hugs through the phone. Just a little more understanding than we had before. And that night, I rewrote the opening monologue for the next episode. Not just about second chances, but about the people who can't always cheer for you, because your freedom reminds them of their cage. A month later, I flew to New York for an interview with CBS. They wanted to do a piece on the rise of second wind, as they called it. I was standing in the makeup chair getting powdered by a woman named Kiki when one of the producers popped in and said, "Hey, just FYI, Brent called." I turned, startled. "What? Brent? Your brother?" He called the studio line. Said he wanted to leave a message. He handed me a folded piece of paper. In Brent's handwriting, blocky and a little messy, it said, "Tell him I watched every episode. And I get it now. I really do." I stared at it for a long time. Longer than I needed to. Then I folded it back up and slipped it into my jacket pocket. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because some things are better left to sit for a while. Like old wine or fresh grief. I wasn't done becoming who I was yet. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't either. I didn't tell anyone about the note. Not Nico. Not Mom. Not the journalist who interviewed me and asked about family and support systems and whether I'd always believed in myself. I hadn't. That was the truth. But I didn't say it on air. Instead, I gave her the polished version. The "you have to bet on yourself" soundbite. It made for better television. It fit the arc the world wanted. Man quits job, gets mocked, finds success, earns respect. But real life isn't a clean narrative. It's messy. It doesn't always hand you closure tied in a bow. When the CBS interview aired, I watched it alone in my apartment. Nico had offered to throw a little watch party, but I passed. I needed space. A little quiet. A reminder that all this started with me talking to no one but myself in a room with bad soundproofing and too much echo. The piece was slick. Professional. They showed old clips of the podcast, photos from my sales days, even a shot of me sitting with Elon, mid-laugh. Then came the narration. A voice once doubted. A dream once dismissed. Now heard by millions. I should have felt proud. I should have sat there with a glass of something expensive and soaked it in. But instead, I kept thinking about Brent's note. About how many people watch me now, but had nothing to say when I was flailing, unsure, trying to get traction with 12 listeners and a laptop that overheated during every upload. It's funny how people only recognize the turning point once the turn is complete. And then came the invitation. It arrived in a sleek, white envelope with a gold seal. No return address. Just my name, written in ink. Inside, a formal invite to speak at a private leadership summit in Zurich. Expenses paid. Six-figure appearance fee. All for a 45-minute talk. Topic: the power of reinvention. I stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed. Out loud. Not because it was funny, but because 6 months ago, I couldn't even get Elon to pretend to take me seriously. Now I was being flown to Switzerland to talk about changing your life. You can't make this stuff up. I called Mom that night. Told her about it. "Oh, honey," she said, in that gentle southern drawl. "Your granddaddy would have loved that. You know, he used to say nobody listens to a quiet man until he says something worth hearing." I smiled. He was right. She paused. "You been talking to your brother?" "Not really. We talked once. He left me a message. That's more than nothing." "Yeah, maybe." She was quiet for a beat, then added, "He's been going through it. I know y'all don't talk like you used to, but he asks about you." I exhaled. I know. Truth was, I'd been avoiding him. Not out of spite, but because reconnecting now, after everything, felt too loaded. Like we couldn't just talk about sports or traffic or the weather without dragging all the unsaid stuff behind us. And part of me wasn't sure if I wanted to mend things. Not yet. Maybe I still needed him to sit in the discomfort. To feel what I'd felt when he chuckled and turned back to his quinoa salad like my life didn't matter. Still, he'd reached out. And even if it was late, it wasn't nothing. The Zurich trip was surreal. First-class flight. Hotel suite overlooking Lake Zurich. People in tailored suits talking about investments and AI ethics and global economics. And me, some dude from Charleston with a podcast mic and a story. I stood on stage, hands slightly trembling, looking out over a room of CEOs, founders, and academics. I took a deep breath. 6 months ago, I was sitting in my spare bedroom in South Carolina, talking into a mic that cost less than my grocery bill. I quit my job. My family thought I was having a midlife crisis. My sister-in-law told me, and I quote, "Nobody wants to hear you talk." A few chuckles. I smiled. And you know what? I believed her. For a little while. But then I realized nobody wants to hear anyone talk until they're saying something real. The rest of the speech came easy, like I'd been waiting to say it my whole life. When I stepped off stage, my inbox was already blowing up. But the text that caught my eye came from a number I hadn't saved in a long time. Brent, heard your talk. It was good. I was wrong. You were right to walk away. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I did something I hadn't done since we were kids. I FaceTimed him. He answered on the second ring, face slightly pixelated, eyes wide. Holy SHD, he said, blinking at the screen. You called. Figured it was about time. He laughed. It was tired, but genuine. How's Zurich? Beautiful. Fancy. Weird. Sounds like you. I smiled. There was a beat of silence. Not awkward, just full. Look, Carter, he said, voice low. I was an ass. I didn't mean to. Well, maybe I did mean to be dismissive back then. But I was scared. Watching you chase something made me realize I hadn't chased anything in years. I get it, I said. I really do. I want to make things right. You already started, I said. We didn't fix everything on that call. We didn't need to. But the wall, it cracked. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had my brother back. Not the version who sat across the kitchen island and laughed at me, but the one who once stayed up with me until 2 a.m. building a treehouse we never finished. Back in L.A., the podcast kept growing. Netflix came back with a formal offer. Not just licensing the audio, but a visual docuseries, hosted by me. They wanted to call it Second Wind, Stories That Saved Me. I said yes. Then I called Mom and told her she needed a passport. She cried, told me she hadn't been on a plane since '93, and even then it was to a funeral. I'll go if you're on that stage, she said. Even if I have to take a damn boat. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Then, the night before we were set to begin filming the pilot episode, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. Hello. The voice on the other end was hoarse, almost nervous. Carter? This is Isla. I sat down. She sounded different. Smaller. Not like the woman who once laughed at me across a granite counter. I know it's late, she said quickly. And I wasn't sure if I should even call, but I need to ask you something. I stayed quiet. Brent told me you're doing a series, she continued. And I have a story. I raised an eyebrow, surprised. I'm listening, I said. Isla's voice was hesitant, like she was treading a line she never thought she'd cross. I've been writing, she said. Journaling. Therapy stuff. And some of it. I think it could help people. I didn't say anything. Just let the words hang between us. I thought maybe, if you ever needed guests for the show. You want to be on Second Wind? I asked, careful not to let my voice tilt into sarcasm. She paused. Not for me. For others. I've been through things I never talk about. I think maybe it's time I do. I let out a long breath. This was it. That moment. The twist. The woman who laughed at me, who once said, nobody wants to hear you talk, was now asking me for a seat at the mic. And honestly, if this had happened months earlier, I might have said yes out of guilt or habit. But now, I was different. Wiser. Clearer. You know, I said slowly, I built this thing from scratch. Every late night. Every doubting voice. Every time I wondered if I was out of my mind. I know, she whispered. And you didn't just doubt me. You mocked me. You made me feel small in my own damn skin. I'm sorry, she said. I believed her. I really did. But I wasn't going to hand her a spotlight out of pity or nostalgia. Isla, I said, I'm glad you're healing. I really am. But Second Wind. It's not about redemption for the people who tried to snuff out someone else's spark. It's about the ones who kept going when nobody clapped for them. There was silence. A beat. Then two. Fair enough, she said quietly. I deserve that. We said goodbye. No yelling. No dramatics. Just an honest moment that had taken years to arrive. And it felt damn good. 6 months later, I stood on stage at the Orpheum Theater in downtown L.A., under hot lights, staring out at a sold-out crowd. My name was on the marquee. The Second Wind Live tour had sold out in 5 cities, with 3 more to go. And sitting in the second row, Brent. Next to him, Mom. Beaming like I was still 6 years old in a school play. And behind them, maybe 4 or 5 rows back, I saw Isla. Alone. Clapping politely. Watching me. Really watching me, for the first time. I opened the show with the story. My story. I told them about the job I left. The family dinner. The chuckle. The mockery. The slow climb in silence. And then I said this. They laughed. They doubted. They told me nobody wanted to hear me talk. And maybe they were right, back then. I paused. Because it turns out, nobody wants to hear someone talk. Not unless they have something to say. The crowd erupted. I saw Isla lower her gaze, then clap again. Not forced. Not fake. Just smaller. She got it now. I didn't need to crush her. Didn't need to humiliate anyone. Because the real revenge was rising anyway. Becoming undeniable. Letting the mic become the loudest I told you so ever spoken. And in that moment, surrounded by strangers who now felt like family, I smiled wide and lifted my voice. Not with bitterness, but with belonging. I didn't need validation anymore. I had something better. A voice that could no longer be ignored. A stage built by doubt and fueled by belief. And the silence of those who once laughed? It was the sweetest sound of all.